Hey up YouTube, what's going on? Hope you're all alright. Hope you've all survived Storm Kira and then Storm Dennis, and they think there's two more on the way, guys, so brace yourselves. So what we're going to be talking about in today's bite size is I've got some questions fired at me from Allotment Life Lancashire UK. Hi Gary, he's been asking me to talk about you guys for a while, and I keep forgetting. It's a great group. Full of it's one of the nicest groups I've seen with regards to how everybody treats one another. So please do check them out. You don't have to be from Lancashire to join them. So please do check them out. And also, I'm going to run you through the basics of NPK fertilizers and the effect it has on your gardens. That's to go hand in hand with the soil sampling that I'm going to be doing. That really should come out in about 2 weeks. So we're going to just briefly touch upon NPK. It's going to be a really short video. I'm keeping it short and sweet today. There's not a great deal going on in the garden. Everybody's sort of stuck in because of the storms. So we're going to address some of these questions, and then I'm going to talk about NPK. So I'll see you in a minute. Good morning, YouTube. Okay guys, welcome back. So we're going to start with the questions from Allotment Life Lancashire. Now there may be some more come up. There is a post on there asking, does anybody have any questions that I may be able to help answer? And I will revisit the subject and things like that if some more go on. So first of all, I'm going to address one from Norm Weston. He's asked, can I talk about the no-dig methods? No, not particularly, Norm. I believe it's been covered so extensively and so much better by some other people. One of them's already been mentioned, Charles Dowding. He sort of brought it back into the public eye. It's a very old method of gardening. But he's sort of brought it back into the public eye and is really pioneering it. It's something I'm only just getting into, and it's not something I have a great deal of knowledge on. So I would recommend checking out Charles Dowding on YouTube. His videos are very good, very thorough. To me, the thing that kind of put me off doing it when I first started allotmenting was the amount of compost that's required. It's a massive undertaking in regards to compost. I mean, for one allotment of no dig, you would need an entire second allotment covered in composting, bins and things like that. It's just not something that was feasible for me. So yeah, I didn't investigate much further into it. It does look like a really good way of gardening. I think people are drawn in because it says no dig. There is still digging, I'm afraid. There is no getting round digging. It is reduced, but it is still digging. The one thing I did notice from Charles Dowding in the last sort of 6 to 8 months, he seems to be doing a lot of talking about diseases, which was always one of my concerns with no dig, because of course you're not changing up your soil, you're not changing your soil structure, so anything that gets into your soil is always going to stay there. So if you get a bed with blight in it, unless you can abandon that bed for, I think, is it 10 years, something silly like that? Unless you can abandon that bed and not grow anything potato related, and bear in mind you're writing off potatoes, tomatoes, cucumbers, not cucumbers, chilies, peppers, things like that. You're not going to be able to grow those in those beds for a long period of time. It put me off a little bit, and sort of long-term diseases like onion white rot, thrip, aphids, things like that. If once they're in that soil, you either start the entire bed again by digging it out and changing it all, or you abandon that bed for that crop for a lengthy amount of time. So there's lots of pros and cons. Personally, it wasn't for me. I think the setup costs and everything like that, it just wasn't worthwhile for me. I have since installed in one of my raised beds it is going to be a no dig bed, and I will probably spread that out over the other beds, but I have to do it in phases. I do everything on a budget, so it's kind of I may do one bed at a time, but I'm going to see how it crops. It's had brassica in it last year, and it's got broad beans in it now. So obviously that'll come out. I'm hoping to squeeze in a third crop in this same season. So we'll see how that goes. If you watch my videos and you want to follow along slightly, it's the one that's currently got the broad beans in that is currently no dig. Question number 2. Sorry, I keep laughing because every time I go down through these questions I see Hayley's gif. She's talking about drainage. Now obviously this, with everything that's gone on the last couple of weeks, it's a big topic on a lot of people's minds. Now, drainage, there's a few ways of tackling drainage. The way I got round it, I mean, my plot luckily doesn't flood, but my plot is an old riverbed, so in theory it could. The way I got round it was raised beds. Half of my plot is raised beds, but the other half may well become raised beds gradually. We'll have to see. The only other working form of water control I have seen done successfully is a drainage ditch. Now what that means is identifying the lowest area of your plot and digging down essentially just a trench, but the size of the trench is going to be depicted by the size of your plot. Now obviously the other factor is, are you the bottom plot in a row of plots? Because if you are, you kind of need to factor that in as well, and if you are, I would advise moving. I really would. If that's not an option, if raised beds aren't an option, then like I said, a drainage ditch. Now from what I can remember, the gent was telling me it was, you needed to go 6 inches down for every 1 foot of ground you want the drainage ditch to cover. No, that can't be right. No, that can't be right, otherwise you'd end up digging one hell of a trench. That was it. It's 6 inches down for every 1 square metre, which of course is what, 3.3 square feet or something like that. But also, as well as down, it can be 6 inches wide as well. So, you know, for every 6 inch square you take out, you're covering, oh god, 2 square metres of plot space. And I know that I'm mixing metric and imperial there, but it's the way my head works. The long and short of it is a deep ditch, a deep trench running the full length at the lowest side of your plot. You can line it with plastic if you want. I advise not doing that, but you will have to keep sort of taking the silt out of it because it will gradually fill back up over time. And what you should find is your water should obviously run off and into there. Even better if you can direct that drainage ditch sort of running angularly down so that the lowest point there is the lowest point of your plot, and then hopefully it has somewhere else to run off to, preferably not somebody else's plot. That's not going to make it very popular. But they're kind of the 2 techniques that I know of really to help deal with creating drainage. Now if your plot's flooded already and you need it to drain, aside from digging a big hole for it all to drain into or getting a petrol pump, I don't think there's a great deal to do. You're just going to have to wait for the waters to subside. It's terrible. It is terrible, and I've seen so many photos out there of flooded plots. I watched, oh, what was his video? Bear with me a moment. I'm just trying to get who it was. Who was it? It was somebody put out a video yesterday. I can't see it. And I'm not going to keep you hanging on. If I find it, I'll put it in a link below. And his plot, it was another YouTuber, great YouTuber. No, I can't find it. and his plot is completely flooded. It is horrendous. It's under about a foot of water in places. Take solace in that, provided that isn't sewage water, you're actually going to end up with some rather rich soil. But yeah, there's not a great deal you can do with it apart from wait for it to subside. If you want to try and avoid it next year, you need to look at drainage ditches, you need to look at raised beds, things like that. But apart from that, there's not a great deal you can do apart from move. And Deborah, final question: pruning your fruit trees. I've actually done a video on that, Deborah. I've covered sort of apple and pear, your winter pruning trees. I've not done your stone fruits or nectarines, peaches, cherries, things like that, because they're done in late summer, if I remember rightly. It's either early summer or late summer. They're not done in winter anyway, so I've not been on YouTube long enough to have covered that subject, because I like to get things out kind of when it's relevant. So pruning your fruit trees, somewhere up here there'll be a card, and it's all about spur-based apple, pear trees, things like that. I do touch upon non-spur or cane growing fruit trees, but 99% of people out there with apple trees and pear trees on their allotment, they're probably going to be spur bearing. So we talk about them. It was a video done in conjunction with Aaron from, I think he does Allotment Beginners UK, and what's his other group? It might just be Allotment UK. I'll try and remind Aaron, comment your Facebook groups in the comments below, please, mate, because they're brilliant groups, they're great sources of information. Aaron himself, great fella. I'm trying to get him to contribute to this channel, but I know he's had some technical difficulties recently. So, there's the 3 questions. You guys only posed 3 questions at me, and I appreciate, really, I've not answered any of them. The no dig, like I said, it's been done to death by so many other YouTubers, and I don't have an example to show yet. So I would recommend checking out Charles Dowding, who's just done a few videos on it. Joe Mills, Digging for Dinner, he's just done a few videos on it, on his I said new, he's had his plot, I think this plot he's on at the moment, he's had about 12 months, and it's all no dig, so head on over, check those guys out. The drainage, Haley, once again, I'm sorry, it's not something I've had personal experience with. It's only through talking to other people on what they've done when they've had problems. And the preventative measure I made was I went into raised beds, but I'm not on the lowest part of my plot. Deborah, there'll be a video link somewhere up above and probably in the description below. So we're going to talk quite briefly about NPK, and it's just a little sort of added extra. Now, first of all, I'm going to tell you what NPK means. So you look on the back of your fertilizers, and it will say it'll have 3 numbers separated with dashes, and those numbers relate to the NPK value of that compost or that fertilizer or that plant food. What it is the value of the nitrogen, the phosphorus and the potassium. So nitrogen being the N, phosphorus being the P, and potassium being the K. Now, try as I may, I can't find any mathematical equation as to, does the 20 mean it's 20%? Does it mean it's 20 milligrams per 100 grams? Or I can't find anything that tells you what that is, other than the higher the number, the higher the value, which I think is a bit of a no-brainer, really. But hey, I mean, I found there is one line on one site that I found, and I'll read it out to you now. And it says, it's evidently from an American site. Fertilizer numbers can be used to calculate how much of a fertilizer needs to be applied equal to 1 pound of the nutrient you are trying to add to the soil. So if the numbers on the fertilizer are 10N, 10P, 10K, you can divide 100 by 10, and that will tell you you need 10 pounds of the fertilizer to add 1 pound of that nutrient to the soil. So if the fertilizer numbers were 20, 20, 20, I'm working with easy numbers here, you divide 100 by 20, so it will take 5 pounds of that chicken pellet, pelletized chicken manure, tomerite, compost, whatever. It will take 5 pounds of that feed to add 1 pound, but this is obviously by weight, of nitrogen, of phosphorus, or potassium. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. It's very difficult. Now obviously, like I said, this is kind of to lead on to the soil testing that I'm going to do, because what you're testing when you're testing your soil, if you've got a full kit, is you're going to test your nitrogen, your potassium, your phosphorus and your pH. Now the reason we do this is because plants need those three key elements, and they prefer a specific pH. For example, blueberries like a high pH of above 7. So that all being said, what do they do? What does nitrogen do? Well, nitrogen is responsible for the leafy green growth on the plants. So without nitrogen, things like your brassicas, your cabbages will struggle, and without leafy green growth it can't photosynthesize, so your fruit trees would suffer, things like that. Phosphorus is responsible for what happens under the soil, so phosphorus does your root growth, your root development. Potatoes love it obviously because essentially a potato is a root. Potassium, it's a bit of an all-rounder is potassium. It helps in every aspect of plant growth, plant development, fruit development, flower development, everything. So potassium really is a real key one there as well. I mean, obviously they're all key, that's why we focus on them. So what you do is what you can do, and what you will see in my upcoming videos, is you will test your soil, you'll get your percentages, or how, but it's not a percentage really, it's sort of how rich it is in these key things and what the pH is, and there are things you can do to adjust the balance. That is something that will be coming up in a later video. I will do a bite size dedicated to what to do if your nitrogen is low, what to do if your phosphorus is low, and what to do if your potassium is low, and how to correct those things. I might do one on its own dedicated to pH, because there's so many plants that require so many different levels of pH and different ways of fixing it and things like that, so that could well be something on its own. But for today guys, that's pretty much all. You guys from Allotment Life Lancashire, I hope I've at least pointed you in some good direction. I appreciate, like I said, but it was 3 of the worst questions for me really. 2 of them I've got little to no experience on, through either not wanting to or not needing to. And the fruit tree one has already been covered, so like I said, I'll link that in a video. So that's it from me guys. I say it's one from sat at home. I've got very little to do down on the plot. I'm quite well prepared down there at the moment. What am I going to tell you about? I'm going to tell you I'm aiming to do another monthly live stream at some point the weekend of the 6th of March. We're going to do a sowing live stream, so I'll be online, I'll be sowing my seeds, my March sowing seeds. It's a big mammoth task is my March sowing. So come along, ask me any questions. There will be something up on the channel, so please subscribe. Hit that bell icon to be notified of to when I'm going live. So I'm undecided what day it's going to be, because I know a couple of my YouTube friends, colleagues, whatever, some of them do Saturday, Sundays. I don't really want to conflict with them. That's one thing I'm trying to avoid. So It's looking like at the moment it's going to be Saturday the 7th at around about 7-8, sorry about that, around about 7-8 p.m. GMT. But I'll confirm that close to the time. Please subscribe and you'll be notified if you hit that bell icon. So until next time guys, or until Sunday, I'll see you in a bit.